Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Rebecca. If you haven't been here before, welcome. So for today's video, we're going to be talking about season 5, episode 8 of Hulu's Only Murders in the Building, and going over any clues and just like theories that I have for the season. If you have not watched all the way up until season 5, episode 8, pause, go catch up, and then come back because this is going to be full spoiler. It's always full spoiler. Make sure to go check out my other videos as well. I have videos for every season of Hulu's Only Murders in the Building, and they all have different theories. So wherever you're at, you can go check them out and hear me talking about my theories of what's going to happen. But before we get into the video, make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, all that good YouTube stuff. It really helps. I'm trying to hit 2,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I think we're almost to 1,400. So definitely subscribe. Maybe we could even get to 1,500 by episode 9. But I really appreciate you guys. Every little bit helps. Sharing with family, sharing with friends, etc., etc. So I love you guys so much. Thank you. And let's get into the video. But really quick, I did get engaged this past week. So just wanted to throw that out there. A little celebration. I'm very excited. And if you notice, because I like to talk with my hands, yes, this is new. I am engaged. Anyway, let's get into this week's episode of Hulu's Only Murders in the Building. So obviously the episode is called Cuckoo Chicks. This is something that we've talked about thus far with Lester and all of his birding. So it is something that we have heard thus far. And the name kind of suggests that cuckoo chicks are birds. Cuckoo birds are birds that lay their chicks in another bird's nest and then leave and let those chicks be raised by the other bird. It's kind of parasitic in nature. Like they lay their eggs with the other eggs, the bird doesn't notice, and then they end up raising the cuckoo. And we know that Oliver was called a cuckoo chick because he was a foster kid. So first thing we hear is O Fortuna playing in the background. This is something that Rainey talks about. It's a song about luck, how it's fickle, and it can kind of bring the poor man up and it can kind of take the rich man down kind of thing. Like luck is not specific to any one kind of person. So Rainey is narrating and she's talking about all these men singing about luck being a lady. There's this obsession with the goddess of fortune. And then she also talks about Frank Sinatra singing his song, Luck Be a Lady, and all about how like he's saying that luck is a lady, that she's kind of his date, and that he hopes she doesn't go away and blow on some other man's dice, as in like luck could abandon you at any point in time, and then you're kind of like shit out of luck. But I think also part of this was just Rainey being like, whenever men run into problems, they blame women. And this can be seen in this like characterization, this personification of luck as a lady. So we see Camilla, she's walking up to Nikki and she's speaking very casually with him, like they know each other really well. She basically asks him if she can have a ladies' night once a month, and he agrees, and they're kind of like flirting back and forth. But this is the first time, this is definitely a flashback, obviously, because Nikki is dead. So this is the first time we're seeing him interact really with any of the billionaires. And just from this, it kind of seems like he and Camilla have some sort of relationship. We flash forward and we see Vince Fish and Mabel talking about the building being sold and turned into a casino, and Vince is very upset. Then Fee shows up. She drops like the main event of the episode, which is that she has tickets to a ladies' night in the Velvet Room held by Camilla, and she can invite whoever she wants. So she gives the tickets to Mabel and a few others, and she's like, I can't come, but it's perfect for you to go and research because it's going to get you an in. And Mabel's like, oh my gosh, I love you, Fee. And Fee's like, now that makes everyone. So we can see their friendship blossoming. We also have the credits rolling. We see a mixer / shaker in Charles's apartment, and then we see 3 people on the roof, and I was like, who are these people? Like, I was really trying to figure out. I think that it's meant to be Dee, Mabel, and Loretta, since they are going to Mabel's night. Since they are going to ladies' night, I think that like they are on the roof of the Arconia in the credits. So Randall tells Oliver and Charles that Camilla owns 49% of the apartments, and if she wins over 50% of the apartments, she has majority stakes over the building, so she can kind of do whatever she wants with it. And apparently a lot of people have moved. Oliver ends up mentioning Loretta. Apparently she's been at the airport for like days. Like, she's trying to fly back out to New Zealand, but her flight has been delayed. Like, I'm pretty sure it's been at least like 2 or 3 days. I'm like, girl, are you okay? So Mabel comes in to tell Oliver and Charles about ladies' night, and they say some very typical old white men misogynistic things about women always talking about men and getting drunk and yapping, which, like, okay, I love a good yap, but like, relax. And Oliver suggests that Mabel bring a party favor, and she says fine, she'll bring tampons as a joke. And then Charles says, Mabel, please don't swear. So I just thought that was a funny moment. And she says, I thought we'd made more progress than this, which, nope. So Oliver ends up calling Loretta at the airport and asks if she will go to ladies' night because he's worried that Mabel doesn't know how to like be around women, I guess. And Loretta's flight is canceled, so she's like, absolutely, I'm there, I'm on my way. Charles and Oliver plan to go door to door to try and stop their neighbors from selling, since I guess she only needs one more apartment in order to be the majority stakeholder. And that's what they're going to be doing while the ladies are at ladies' night. Loretta comes in and she's got Detective D, who apparently was also trying to get on a flight that was canceled. So they are all going to go to ladies' night together. And Dee says that she knows how to cold deck and skew the cards. So basically, she's planning on manipulating the game to force Camilla to lose a bunch, and this will make her open up, apparently. And Charles is kind of going back and forth with Dee, saying like, yeah, I'm a card man because my mom used to have me deal games with her friends and I would help her cheat. And she always rewarded me for this behavior. Like, when she won, she was happy. So she would like buy him appetizers at dinner and stuff like that. And that is the origin of Charles's sexy villain storyline, where he's in love with these women who are pseudo villains or like fully villains. Like Jan is a full villain. Sophia is maybe a villain, but also like villain adjacent because her family's in the mob. So Charles has never been to therapy to talk about this. Clearly he needs to go. And that's just an interesting little tidbit about Charles and like his origin story, if you will. So while they're talking about plans of like how to get Camilla to open up to them, Loretta says that she is also a talented medium, or at least an actress of a medium, because she lived with this roommate, Celery Wisp, who taught her and also told her that she had the gift. So the backup plan is that she's going to speak to Camilla and talk to her about ghosts, especially because Camilla believes that she's the reincarnation of her great-grandmother. And that's why she says she wears these gloves, because her grandmother is inside her, if you will. So, and that's something that they learned like from a magazine interview that someone did with Camilla. Oliver realizes that he doesn't actually know Loretta all that well because she's telling him all this stuff, and he's like, I didn't know you were so woo-woo. And he's kind of getting, I guess, maybe intimidated about their relationship. So next, we move away from this, and the ladies are going to Nasty Gal to dress these tits. And we get a very hot montage of them walking in. They look stunning. Okay, that dress on Mabel, no words. I have no words. Amazing, incredible. Knocked it out of the park. They all look beautiful. But they walk in, and they're walking into the Arconia lobby after doing their fashion montage, and Rainey is there crying. And so Mabel introduces Rainey to the other women, and they invite her to come to ladies' night to help kind of convict Camilla. And Dee seems to think that this is not a good idea, which is totally fair. But Rainey's like, no, I want to be there when she explains herself. So they go in. Dee ends up stopping, seeing a dealer, and realizes that this might be a better chance to manipulate the game and Camilla. So she ends up coming in later and stealing dealer Christie's uniform. We don't know what happened to Christie, but she's in a better place apparently. So Camilla comes over to the table, agrees to play with the women. They're kind of pretending like they don't know each other because they don't want her to like get the gist of what's happening. We go back to Charles and Oliver, and they've been called down to the lobby by Randall, and Dr. Grover Stanley is apparently the most recent person who is planning on selling his apartment, and they decide that they're going to convince him not to sell. So they tell him like, oh, the building's going to be turned into a casino if you leave. Like, you can't sell your apartment to Camilla. And he says, well, if the apartment becomes a casino and then New York kind of becomes like Atlantic City, then I'll have more people who need therapy, and that actually might be really good for me. And Charles and Oliver are like, you know what? We'll pay you. We'll pay you to have a therapy session with us tonight. And Dr. Grover Stanley's like, okay, since it's my last night, I'll do a 2-for deal for you two. I'll do a session for you together. So they leave to kind of do that. Loretta walks over to the table since they kind of split up, and Dee immediately is starting to deal the game they're playing, and she deals Mabel, Rainey, and Loretta a 21, and like doesn't give one to Camilla. And I just thought this was funny. I was like, can we be a little bit less obvious that we're manipulating the game? You gave everyone but Camilla a 21 and an immediate win. Like, come on. You're supposed to be a police detective. Like, be a little more subtle. But anyway, whatever. So they're playing a couple of rounds. Camilla slowly begins to kind of trust Celery and her like intuition, Loretta. And Celery's like, oh, I don't think you should split the deck, or I don't think you should do this. And she ends up being right because Dee is obviously manipulating the game and she knows that. So Camilla's like, oh, okay, like you have some sort of intuition. Maybe I should listen to you. Rainey gets angry. She breaks character and she starts threatening to strangle Camilla. And Mabel ends up having to take her to leave, and they both go to the lobby to just kind of talk and decompress. Rainey's like, I'm sorry, I got so emotional. And she's looking at Lester's stuff and she's kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that they cleaned his hat, but I wish that his elevator crank was in here because he always had that. And Mabel's like, oh, I thought that you had the elevator crank. That's kind of weird. And so they kind of realize that this is possibly a clue and something that's missing. Obviously, we know it's a clue. Where on earth is the elevator crank? We go back to the game, and Loretta is continuing to try and get information from Camilla, and she ends up saying, oh, she's cheating, she's making you lose, I can see her with the double cards, like. And Dee is pissed because obviously like this was not what her plan was. This is kind of off the rails. And so they end up taking Dee away. Camilla's like, get her out of here, it's no wonder I keep losing. And Loretta begins to tell Camilla that she's a medium, someone dead needs to speak to her. She, references the split in the table that has been sewn up where the meat cleaver was, and martinis. And we see a flashback of the meat cleaver splitting the table and a scream that is possibly Camilla. And I tried to take a screenshot. It's very quick, but from what I could see, I think that the person who split the leather and the one who was holding the meat cleaver was Nicky, because he had a lot of different rings on his fingers. And yes, characters wear rings, but when you look at Nicky, he's not just wearing one or two. He's wearing them on both hands. He's got a lot of them. Most of them are gold. So I think he was the one in that flashback. So we go to Charles and Oliver, who are trying to convince Dr. Grover Stanley not to move. And he's like, enough about me, let's get back to you two. And he's like, Charles and Oliver, like, tell me about your relationship. And they're like, oh no. Oliver's like, I'm married to a woman. So they're kind of being like, it's just funny that they're mistaken as like a couple, like cuties. But anyway, Dee ends up coming in to the therapy, and she is like, I got kicked out by Loretta. And they're like, well, do you want to join? And she's like, I could use a good time. I will absolutely be joining. And then we flash back to Loretta, And we learn that Nikki used to make Camilla martinis. We see a flashback of her telling Nikki that Bash and Flug want to open their own casinos. And he says, you know, they play here and then they're going to do me like that, like over my dead body, which obviously true. And then Camilla suggests that she buy up apartments in the Arconia so that they can expand the Velvet Room together. But Nikki says that, you know, it's his wife's business. He can't do that to the family. And she's kind of like, well, I thought you were leaving your wife. Like, I thought we had a little something right here. And he's like, no, I love my wife. It's her family's legacy and I couldn't sell it. So we don't know exactly what's going on with Nikki and Sophia at this point, but it's pretty clear that he is staying faithful to her, at least in this situation. So then after that, Camilla immediately calls someone and is like, I want to start buying up the apartments in the Arconia. Charles and Oliver and Dee we're back to therapy, and they're going over Charles's mommy issues and how he ended up with Jan and all this stuff. Dee ends up saying, jealousy is a very underrated emotion. Sometimes it's the very thing that we need to aim for something, because they're asking him like whose relationship he's the most jealous of, and he says Oliver. So I thought that was an interesting quote because it could represent Camilla and the casino. Like, she's jealous of Sophia, but it's driven her to open her own casino. Or we could talk about Sophia and like jealousy driving her to cheat because she assumed that Nikki was cheating, which is the storyline of Tosca, which was mentioned multiple times throughout the season. If you want to hear me talk more about that, go back to like one of the last 2 episodes I did, because we talk a lot about Tosca. It's an opera and it really focuses on a woman thinking that her husband is cheating, like assuming that he's cheating when he's actually staying faithful to her and is not cheating on her at all. And this kind of seems to reflect Sophia and Nikki's relationship. So Charles says, yeah, I'm jealous of Oliver and Loretta's relationship. And then they end up being like, well, Oliver's problem is that he's an insecure guy who covers it with bravado. And Oliver says, oh, Mama, I'm bad afraid. So once again, that same bravado, but like maybe finally realizing his own issues. Neither of these men have ever been to therapy, so this is probably good for them. Then Grover comes to the conclusion in this therapy session that he's running away from his problems and his fear of like connecting with people. Like, he's a therapist and his whole job is about connection, but he has a hard time connecting with his neighbors. And so that's why he's decided to sell the apartment. It's actually his own fear and it has nothing to do with not wanting to be there anymore. So then he's like, never mind, I'm not going to sell it. But unfortunately, it's 12:15, 15 minutes too late to pull back out of that deal. And so Camilla officially owns the majority stake of the Arconia. Loretta and Camilla continue to connect, and Camilla flashes back to Nikki when he was missing, and she like runs into him, and he tells Camilla that he is in on the deal with her, the whole casino scheme, and that if his wife didn't want him to F up the family legacy, then she shouldn't have F'd someone else. So we officially hear that Sophia is cheating on Nikki, and he admits that he saw them together, and he seems really disturbed by this. So we're not sure who it is, but this kind of goes with some of the theories that we talked about in past videos. So this is when they plan to have a private game to kind of win the contract for the casino, and it all kind of like leads up to that night when Lester died. We're back to present with Camilla and Loretta, and Camilla says, effing doorman, and then her phone buzzes and she's like, actually it doesn't matter because I officially own majority of the Arconia and I won. And she walks away. And so we're thinking, what doorman? Is she talking about Lester? Like, what happened between them? What did he know? And Loretta sneaks into the Velvet Room's office, and that's kind of the end of that scene. Mabel and Rainey are in Mabel's apartment, I think, and they're smoking weed, and Mabel's talking about her possible feelings for Jay, and Rainey's like, you have to let go of control because nobody has control. Not the richest billionaire and not the wife of a doorman who passed away. Like, none of us have control over our lives, and you have to stop trying to force it and just go with the flow, kind of. So Mabel's like, you know what, Rainey, I think you're right. I'm going to text Jay and like see where this leads. And then she also shows her their box of clues, and Rainey sees Lester's bird whistle and she blows it. You know, she's facing the window, so she blows it. And immediately we see that Vince Fish gets a notification on his phone that a bird is in the courtyard of the Arconia. And it starts to click why Lester would have blown that bird whistle as using his last breath. So, therapy's over. Loretta comes in and she kind of is telling them all the things she found out. They're very impressed. You know, she's telling them about Camilla and Nikki and how Camilla was in love with him and all their plans. So Loretta puts down the elevator crank and it's covered in blood. And Mabel says, "Did you just find the murder weapon?" And she's kind of like, maybe. So we think she may have. Oliver finally admits to Loretta that he doesn't want to move anymore and that like the Arconia is his home. And she says, you know, I have to go back to New Zealand, but I know you're going to find a way to save our home. She seems like she's okay with it. And Vince and Rainey end up showing up to the apartment where they all are. And they're like, we realized why the Lester was using that bird whistle. It activated bird cameras that Vince and Lester had set up in the courtyard. And it was to like get the cameras to start going so that Lester was hopefully going to capture, I think, his murderer. So Vince pulls up these videos that they have and they're like, well, can you go back? Because we can't see who hit him. And Vince is like, I can't go back because it's only triggered by the bird call. That's when they turn on. So we can't see how he fell in. But what we do see is Randall walk by and pick up the crank in the plastic bag. And Loretta says, oh my gosh, they weren't talking about Lester when Camilla said effing doorman. She was talking about Randall. So now it seems like Randall was actually involved in all of this somehow. We're not 100% sure how or why. But that leads us to the theories portion of today's video. So let's just kind of consolidate what we're talking about here. There weren't a ton of like specific little clues in this episode. It was much more just like an information dump on us. So thinking that Randall is involved somehow, he was there when Lester died, so he knows something. But Randall doesn't seem likely to be the killer at this point because it's too early for them to be like outing the killer in this way. If anything, we'll learn who the killer is next episode. So Randall's kind of almost like freed from this. Like he's not the murderer, although he may be involved. I still think that the finger that they found is Mayor Bo Tillman's, especially with the mention, we talked about this last episode of Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, the idea that someone can be so corrupt but still get into office. And the whole idea that like the police have been covering up his crimes and that it's possible he wanted to build a casino in New York, but knowing that the mob already had the Velvet Room, he knew he needed to eliminate Nikki in order to get this rolling. And I still like, obviously Tosca has come into effect here and is now, it's kind of showing why it's relevant with Sophia cheating on Nikki. And I think her reason will probably be that she always thought that he was cheating on her, so she eventually decided to start cheating on him because there just like wasn't trust there. And I think that there's two options for who she's cheating with. I think she could be cheating with Bash Steed, specifically because his bird is the kakapo, and kakapos are solitary, but they come to mate and then they leave the female kakapo alone to raise the children. So maybe Bash is the father of one of Nikki's children, and maybe he doesn't know it, maybe he does, but I think Nikki definitely didn't know it. And so, you know, that could be a part of this. We also have talked about Madame Butterfly, which is like another play that was mentioned earlier on in the season with like one of the posters on Lester and Rainey's apartment walls. And that is literally about like someone having a child and then someone else, like the husband, taking it away and raising it with a different wife. So I think it's very possible that someone's child is not actually their child and has been raised probably by Nikki thinking that he's their father when he's actually not. And so I think this could be part of the reason why Nikki actually died this season. Not about necessarily the casino or being a part of the mob, but someone wanting to get revenge. Maybe his child, maybe one of the boys wanting to get revenge because they thought that he had been lying to them. Or maybe the kid's father wanting to get revenge because, you know, he had been taken out of the situation unfairly and he didn't even know. So he murdered Nikki because of it. We're not 100% sure, obviously. So I think that the other person that Sophia could be sleeping with might be Mayor Tillman, and that he could be involved somehow, especially because I think it just seems like it has to be someone with a significant amount of power based on how shaken Nikki seemed when talking to Camilla. I think that Lester's murder is separate from Nikki's and has more to do about him protecting the Arconia and like not wanting it to become a casino, possibly about the information he had about the building. And then we also heard early on in the season that the elevator crank was mentioned as something that was keeping the residents safe. And so if Lester had the crank, it's possible that the killer specifically murdered him to get access to the crank. Maybe it leads them to a secret room. You know, obviously we know that the Arconia has all these secret passageways. So it would make sense that possibly that was the reason that Lester was killed. Either the information he had or specifically to get the crank from him. Because the fact that they took it maybe signifies that, but also it was the murder weapon. The other reason I think that the finger is Mayor Beau Tillman's is because when Charles went to shake his hand that day that he was having a date with Sophia, it was the left hand and the mayor like kind of flinched backwards and Charles was like, oh, sorry, I have all this extra testosterone that it's making me so strong. Like, I'm so sorry that I hurt you. And he also has a ring around his finger, which a couple of the characters do, so it's possible that they're trying to confuse us, but I really think that it's Mayor Tillman's finger. And another thing that I saw, and I did not come up with this myself, I saw this on Reddit, but there was someone who wrote that when Lester texted Rainey, "It's beautiful," and it was the last text he ever sent, it's possible that that was an autocorrect, and what he actually meant to say was, "It's Beau Tillman," and he was trying to expose his murderer before he died. And so it autocorrected to beautiful, but it was really Beau Tillman. So how is Randall involved? I'm not super sure. I don't think that he is involved in the sense that he murdered anyone. I think maybe he got wrapped up in the wrong crowd, or maybe he's been under the wing of the billionaires. They promised him that they would help him be successful in the music industry or whatever it was, and he agreed to kind of like help them spy on Lester, figure out what he knew, you know, because he got the notebook with all the information. So maybe they specifically were like, Randall, you need to get a job at the Arconia as a doorman so that you can get us this information. And when he saw the murder weapon, I think maybe he picked it up and like brought it and put it away because he didn't know. Maybe he felt like his own life was at risk. Like, if I tell what I saw, I'm going to be the next one to die. So those are my theories for this season. I think that Beau Tillman is the main murderer, but maybe one of Nikki's sons or the real father is the other murderer, or that's part of the reason why Nikki died. If you guys have any theories, I'd love to hear them. Please put them down in the comments below. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification, all that good YouTube stuff. I love hearing your theories and like your thoughts on the season so far. Are you liking it? Do you like the new characters that they've added? Do you like the storyline? Who do you think is going to be next to be murdered? Are we going to end on a murder the same way that we have ended on a murder in past seasons? Let me know your thoughts. If we do end on a murder, who is it going to be? I love you guys so much, and I will see you guys next week with another video talking about Hulu's Only Murders in the Building. Bye, guys.